At Astor Ridge Biotech, the light was always too clean. Glass walls, marble floors, air so aggressively conditioned it felt like someone had outlawed anything human. Even scent was controlled, sterile, neutral, approved. That night was supposed to be a celebration, a corporate reception for the launch of a new drug line and the signing of a major international distribution deal. I was supposed to look proud. I was supposed to feel accomplished. That was the script. My name is Nathan Blake. I'm 39. I run the analytics division, the kind of role where you see patterns before they become headlines. And about a minute before everything broke, I still believed I understood my own life. My wife, Maya, stood beside me. We'd been together 12 years, 4 of them living in that glossy version of adulthood where everything looks stable from a distance. She worked at the same company as Director of Communications and Partnerships. She had a talent for making rooms listen, even rooms full of people who rarely listened to anyone. We arrived together. In the elevator, I held her hand and had the quiet, ordinary thought, okay, we made it through the rough patch. We're back on track. It was such a normal thought, I barely registered it, like breathing. The CEO's speech ended, glasses clinked, people laughed in those careful, practiced ways that say, I belong here. Maya slipped away into the crowd for a few minutes. I didn't worry. She was always moving, greeting investors, smoothing conversations, doing what she did best. I spotted her again near Caleb Rowe, our chief operating officer. Caleb was the kind of man who never raised his voice, which somehow made him feel more dangerous. Expensive watch, perfect posture, a smile that made people uneasy because they couldn't tell if they'd been complimented or mocked. Caleb lifted his glass as if he were about to propose a toast. The circle tightened instinctively. Department heads, legal counsel, a few key scientists, PR staff, even a board member who always looked like he'd shown up solely to confirm everyone was still afraid of him. Nathan, Caleb said, and there was open enjoyment in his tone. You look appropriate tonight. Nice suit, nice tie, nice wife. He paused, letting the word wife hang there. Too bad you won't be taking her home. There was no laughter, only something worse. Laughter would have made it a joke, a moment you could swat away. No one laughed. They held their breath instead, frozen in half smiles, trying to choose the correct expression so they wouldn't misread the power dynamics. A cold line moved up my spine. Caleb, what are you talking about? He didn't rush. He turned slightly toward Maya, and she, this is the part my brain still chews on, didn't step away, didn't cut him off, didn't look shocked. She stood close to him and looked at me as if we were separated by glass. Caleb reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper, an ordinary bar receipt. He opened it slowly and tapped one line with his fingertip. This, he said, like he was explaining a trivial expense to accounting, this is an advance for tonight. Your wife likes things tidy, documentation. Then he did something even uglier. He reached into his other pocket and produced her silver bracelet, the one I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. It had an engraving. I watched the metal catch the cold overhead light. I think, Caleb added, it suits me better. For a second, I didn't understand what I was seeing. My mind rejected it the way a body rejects pain in the first instant, before the wave hits. I looked at Maya. Tell me this is some stupid stunt. Tell me it's a joke. She didn't answer immediately. Her lips parted slightly, and I didn't see shame or fear. I saw something worse, mild exhaustion, like she was tired of performing. Nathan, she said evenly, please, not right now. 2 words, not right now, not no, not stop, not this isn't true, not I'm with you, just not right now. Around us were people who'd known me for years. I'd stayed late with them, rescued projects from collapse, patched budget holes, defended our department during audits when the company was wobbling. Now they watched me the way you watch an incident, not a person. My fingers started to tremble, not from tears, from disbelief, from the sheer impossibility of it. And then something in me clicked. I didn't shout. I didn't throw a glass. I didn't swing at Caleb. I understood one thing with sudden clarity. If I broke down, they got everything. If I made a scene, it became their version of the story. I needed my version. Okay, I said. The word came out calm enough that a few people blinked like they hadn't expected it. I need some air. I turned and walked away. I felt the eyes on the back of my head. Elevator, corridor, another corridor. In the lobby, a security guard nodded politely, unaware that an entire floor inside me had just collapsed. Outside, it was Seattle. Night noise, wet asphalt, coffee, water in the air. I stepped under the building's overhang and finally allowed myself to breathe like I was pushing someone else's chest off my chest. My phone felt heavy. I called Ethan Coleman, my lawyer and friend from college, the guy who lived in my dorm room for 2 semesters and still knows my tells better than most people in my life. He picked up fast. "Nathan, what happened? You sound weirdly calm." "I need divorce papers, today, and I need your brain, right now." "What?" "She's with him, Caleb Rowe, publicly, in front of leadership. He showed me a receipt like proof, and he had her bracelet." Ethan went quiet for a long beat, then exhaled. "Okay, listen to me carefully. First, you are not going home tonight. Second, you do not text her back, even if you want to. Third, you come to my office tomorrow at 7 a.m. And one more thing." "What?" "You said months ago the numbers in that company smelled wrong. Is this that moment?" I closed my eyes. "Yeah, it is." "Then we work," Ethan said. "We work now." I didn't go home, hotel, or bar. I went to my sister, Claire. She lived in a small apartment above a repair shop on the north side of the city. She'd always said, "If your life ever collapses, come here. I'll have a blanket and silence." When she opened the door and saw my face, her expression changed without needing words. "What happened?" "Maya," I said. That was enough. Claire didn't interrogate me immediately. She poured water, then tea, sat me at the kitchen table, turned on a small lamp that softened the shadows. I took off my jacket and felt like I was removing a label someone had pinned onto my skin. "Tell me." So I did. Not neatly, not in a clean timeline. Sometimes I lost the thread because my mind kept circling back to the same image. Maya beside Caleb, her "not right now," the room holding its breath. Maya and I met at a volunteer event years ago. She was doing communications for a nonprofit program. I was the promising analyst trying to claw my way into a stable life. She was brilliant, warm in a room full of careful people. She made you feel seen. The first years were real. I remember her laugh in a cheap apartment, weekend trips to the coast, the dumb little rituals we built like bricks. Then came promotions, status, functions, conversations about image. I thought it was normal. That was adulthood, growing up, changing. This past year, she'd become different, controlled, as if there was a separate director inside her, choosing every beat. There were closed meetings, sensitive negotiations, confidential work. Her phone always face down, her smile always correct and empty. "And you?" Claire asked. "Did you ask her?" I hesitated. "I tried not to look jealous," I admitted, "not to be weak. I thought if I was a better husband, it would pass." Claire didn't laugh. She nodded with that hard tenderness people have when they've watched enough things fall apart. My phone buzzed. A message from Maya. "Where are you? You made a scene. People are asking." Then one from Caleb. "Hope you're not planning drama. You know how the adult world works." I stared at the screen and felt something dark rising in me. Not like fire, more like cold water flooding in. I didn't reply. I muted the phone, set it face down. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't for Maya's comfort. It was for mine. I barely slept, not because I cried. Tears didn't come. What came was replay, the moment looping again and again. Maya's "not right now," Caleb's receipt, the room of people choosing silence. At 4 a.m., I got up and went to the bathroom.
I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a man who had held his spine straight for a long time while someone carved at him. And I thought, okay, then this isn't about pain anymore. This is about order. Because I really had been seeing strange numbers. 9 months earlier, I'd noticed inconsistencies in internal reporting for lab equipment procurement. On paper, we were buying systems at prices that were too high for the market. Premium service, custom configuration, limited batches, smooth explanations. But numbers don't love smoothness. Numbers love truth. Quietly, I started cross-checking contracts. No loud requests, no dramatic questions, just verifying where money flowed, who the vendors were, why certain intermediaries existed at all. Some of the company names were new, recently formed with no history. Some payments went through middlemen that made no operational sense. Caleb Rowe oversaw operations and procurement. He loved to talk about optimizing chains. I could see he was optimizing more than supply chains. By morning, I had one decision. I was going to Ethan, and I was going not as a humiliated husband, but as someone carrying keys to a safe.
At 7 a.m., I sat across from Ethan in his office. The building was old, dark stairs, windows that looked out onto a rainy street. It smelled like coffee and paper. Reality. Ethan met me without a blazer, 2 mugs on the desk, a thick folder already waiting. "You look like you didn't sleep." I didn't. "Good," he said. "That means you're not mush. You're focused. That's better than it sounds." He didn't lead with sympathy. He understood that pity at the wrong moment can make a person weaker. He just worked. "Divorce," he said. "Your income similar?" "Yeah, mine's a bit higher, not much." "No kids?" "No." "No prenup?" "No." He nodded, making notes. "That helps, but there's a complication. If she decides to paint you as unstable, controlling, vindictive, she can try. Your wife works in PR." "She does." "Then she knows how to manufacture a version of reality." "I know. I didn't." He slid documents across the desk, marked with sticky tabs. I signed, feeling each signature not as revenge, but as me reclaiming my name. "Now," Ethan said, "Caleb." I handed him a flash drive and opened my laptop. Spreadsheets, invoice copies, payment chains. I explained slowly, clearly, like someone used to being believed, not because of emotion, but because of evidence. "Here's a cryosystem contract, price listed, $8.4 million. Market, about 5.9. The gap goes through an intermediary. That intermediary was formed 11 months ago. Director's a placeholder. Address is a mailbox." Ethan listened without interrupting, only asking sharp questions that made the picture colder and clearer. "If this holds," he said, "this isn't internal nonsense. This is federal. Audits, search warrants, criminal exposure." "I know. And you understand the company will try to crush you." "They already tried." And almost on cue, like reality was eavesdropping through the vents, the office door opened. Maya stood there. No makeup, red eyes, hair pulled back carelessly. The dress from last night, the one she wore beside Caleb. She looked like she hadn't slept either. But her exhaustion wasn't from grief. It was from the fact that her script had stopped obeying her. "Nathan," she said, voice sharp as thin steel, "you disappeared. You're not answering. You humiliated me. Do you understand what you did?" I lifted my eyes slowly. "Me?" I said. "Did I do that?" Ethan stood, polite but firm. "Miss Blake," he said, "this is a private office. If you want to speak, you do it civilly." Maya looked at him like he was a piece of furniture in her way. "This is between us," she said. "No," Ethan replied. "It's legal now." I didn't interrupt right away. I watched her assemble her arguments. She was good at that. "It was a stupid moment. Caleb went too far. But you
You acted like I'm your enemy, like I don't have the right. Maya, I cut in calmly, you stood there while he held my gift like a trophy. You looked at me and said, not right now. You didn't say no. You didn't tell him to stop. You didn't do anything. She froze for half a second. Then the familiar defensive mask slid into place. You're exaggerating, she said. You always take things too. Stop, I said. Don't turn this into me. This is your choice. For the first time, something like fear flickered through her. You filed for divorce? Ethan placed the paperwork on the desk. These are the documents. You can review them, consult your counsel, respond accordingly. But the process has started. Maya took the pages. Her hands shook, though she tried to hide it. This is insane. After everything we... and you still can't say you're sorry. You can only say it's insane. You're angry I won't return to the role. Her face darkened. You're making a mistake, Nathan. No, I'm correcting one. She left hard, slamming the door like she wanted the sound to stand in for an apology. Ethan turned back to me. Now, federal agencies. I have a contact in economic crimes. We don't do an internal review. Internal reviews exist to protect the internal. I nodded. Let's go.
The federal building downtown didn't try to look impressive. No glossy marble, no branded smiles. Just walls, files, tired eyes, and voices that didn't waste emotion. We spoke to investigators for nearly 3 hours. I laid out the material, answered questions, explained why those payment chains looked like laundering. They didn't nod with excitement. They nodded like people who'd seen versions of this before, which was scarier. At the end, one of them, Special Agent Laura Kim, said, "You understand they'll come after you. Reputation, employment, personal life. The company will try to frame you as a bitter spouse looking for revenge." "They're going to do that anyway," I said. "But this isn't revenge, it's fact." Laura studied me. "One more thing," she said. "We received an anonymous tip about Astor Ridge months ago. We lacked structure. What you brought is structure." A sharp thought hit me. Someone else already knew. Someone had been afraid or waiting. On the way back to the car, I thought of Allison Wade, our CFO. She was as cold as a calculator. They'd passed her over twice, placing Caleb above her for operations. The night of the reception, she'd stood apart, watching me the way someone watches a fuse burn down. I had no proof, but suspicion is its own kind of pattern recognition. Then I made my mistake. I believed I'd have time to act normal, like Laura advised, but Astor Ridge moved faster. Systems like that have a nose. They feel when someone removes control. The next morning, I came in early. The lab campus was waking slowly. Before I even logged in, I got a message from HR. "Urgent meeting, 9:15, office 14B. I wasn't surprised. My body was already in, "Okay, here we go" mode. Inside were 3 people, the HR director, corporate counsel, and Caleb Rowe. Caleb looked different, no theater, dark eyes, tight jaw. He watched me like I was a problem to be removed before it went public. HR began officially. "Nathan Blake, following a review, we're suspending your access to corporate systems. The company has decided to terminate your employment due to violations of confidentiality policies." "Which policies?" I asked evenly. The attorney, young, nervous hands, read from a paper. "Unauthorized access to financial documents, retaining copies outside secure systems." "You think you're a hero?" Caleb said. "You think you can do whatever you want and call it ethics?" I looked at him calmly. "I think you've lived too long like rules are for other people." A muscle jumped near HR's eye. "Nathan, here's what we'll do. I'll leave quietly right now, but you won't touch my reputation or my documents again, because this is no longer in your hands." I walked out carrying a box of personal items. In the corridor, people looked away. Some looked sympathetic but stayed silent. Sympathy without action is just comfort for the fearful. In the parking lot, Maya texted, "What are you doing? You're destroying everything. You're ruining my career." For the first time in days, I replied, "You chose what mattered to you." Then I turned my phone off, not dramatically, not to punish her, simply because I no longer needed to be available for her version of reality.
2 weeks later, the news broke, first as dry headlines on business sites, then on TV, then online, where people love blood even under clinical white light. Astor Ridge Biotech under federal investigation. Search warrants executed at headquarters. COO Caleb Rowe arrested on suspicion of financial fraud and money laundering. I was sitting at Claire's kitchen table, the same place I'd been drinking tea and trying not to unravel. On the screen, agents carried boxes, computers were carted out, and Caleb, the man who'd enjoyed my humiliation, stood with his hands behind his back, no smile, no control. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like an ordinary man finally caught by reality. That was the harshest part. Evil rarely has horns. It has a tailored suit and confidence. Maya called that evening. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Nathan?" Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I saw it. I didn't know it would go this far." "You didn't know what would go this far?" A pause. "I thought Caleb was strong," she said, "untouchable." There it was, her truth. She didn't necessarily betray me for cruelty. She gravitated toward power, toward what looked unbreakable. She needed the winner in the room, and she decided the winner wasn't me. "You destroyed everything," she whispered. I looked out the window. Rain fell in a steady, quiet line. Seattle knew how to be sad without theatrics. No, I stopped covering a lie. "I want to talk, in person. We've had talks. You always spoke in a way that left you an exit. I don't live in a room where your exits are my responsibility anymore." I didn't slam the phone down. I ended the call normally, without rage. I didn't need to prove I was right. I needed to not return to the place where I'd been reduced. The divorce took longer than I wanted. She hired an aggressive attorney. There were attempts to paint me as unstable, vindictive, a man acting out. She tried to make her choices into my reactions. But it's hard to bargain with a face when the paperwork speaks louder. Eventually, it ended. No applause, no victory speech, just signatures, dates, and what people call settlement. I lost the job that had been my identity for years, but I got something else: silence in my head. A few months later, I joined a small research firm where nobody turned meetings into theater or titles into religion. The pay was lower. There was no marble. It smelled like real coffee and paper where people wrote uncomfortable truths instead of polished lines. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't replayed that reception scene in days. It stopped being the center. It became a fact, painful but past. And for the first time in a long time, I caught myself thinking something simple. I don't need them to regret it. I just need to not betray myself. Sometimes people ask, friends of friends, people who caught fragments in headlines, if I feel satisfaction. I don't. Satisfaction is the emotion of victory, and I don't feel like a victor. I feel like a man who finally walked out of a room that had been suffocating for years and breathed air he didn't have to earn. Caleb Rowe is still under prosecution. His lawyers build defenses the way everything in that world is built, expensive and arrogant. Maya still works in reputations, probably more carefully now. I don't care who she persuades next. Because the lesson wasn't cheating gets punished. It wasn't bad people always get what's coming. The world isn't that fair. The lesson is that when you're publicly humiliated, the most dangerous thing isn't the moment itself. The most dangerous thing is accepting their version of who you are. I didn't, and that's enough.